Chris Cope. Welcome to the DuCross Brothers Sports Warriors. My friend, you have a lot of stuff to get off on your chest. This is an open forum. You dare to cross that line? What do you got to say?
No, I mean, whatever questions you guys got on me, I'll answer them. But the way I look at it is the UFC is kind of going downhill. I mean, Dana White's getting a lot of bad press. I think he's going about things in a wrong way. I think this whole Reebok deal, I mean, it works good for the UFC, but I think it works bad for the fighters. I think it's taking a lot of money out of the pockets from what they could make. The retainer fee was, one thing where they had these sponsors that pay the retainer fee to sponsor them. But then it went to another thing when it came to the type of deal where, now everything's Reebok. And now these guys are walking into the cage looking like soccer players followed by caddies, you know what I mean? It's making it also where the differentiality of the fighters, it's kind of taken away from them. And Stitch, the whole thing with Stitch being fired, that's just completely ridiculous, because Stitch is probably one of the coolest guys that you could ever possibly meet. And just for the guy speaking of the mind, that's one thing. And then Burt Watson leaving, I mean, that's one of the main guys of the UFC. And then getting rid of him, that's crazy, Well, actually, they didn't get rid of him. Burt Watson left, but I'm pretty sure he's probably pressured out, because Burt, he lives and breathes the UFC. And I asked him one time, I asked him where he's from and where's his home. They said this is home, referring to the UFC. And that's the sad thing about it. I've seen Burt leave and then seeing, Stitch, get canned. That's just, it's crazy,
Chris Cope, that seems like that was the tipping of everybody kind of going against the UFC, was when Stitch went ahead and said that he was released from UFC. It seems like that's when all the can of worms started to open, to the point now you even have Wanderlei Silva coming out saying that there's fixed fights in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about fixed fights, because, I mean, the platform that I was at with the UFC, you got to remember, I wasn't in the big deal and this and that, but, I remember being in a room with, because before the UFC happens, you sit in a room with Dana, all the fighters, and he gives you this big, massive speech about how, you need to not leave in the hands of the judges, get the knockout of the night, get the submission of the night, fight of the night, they'll pay you X amount of dollars. I think Wanderlei, Wanderlei was kind of like on a losing skid, and I think a lot of these guys that go really vocal about the UFC, they're usually like on a losing skid, and they know that they're probably about to be released, so might as well go out in style. I've got no shame or saying that I was released from the UFC. I got a letter in the mail saying thank you for your services, but they're no longer needed. It is what it is, and that's why I think a lot of these guys are going on a losing skid. They're also going to Bellator. But, here's the thing. You can't monopolize a certain thing and then start treating people like, the dirt. And, I fought for certain organizations, and I'm not going to lie, the UFC actually did treat me good. But the thing is, when you got a company that's worth $4 billion and you're paying entry-level fighters $8 and $8, and then you take their sponsorships down from like $10,000 down to like, $500, there's something wrong with that. Morally, ethically, it just doesn't sit well with me. And I kind of feel kind of like a horse's ass, because, the Culinary Commission, which is, trying to get the UFC unionized, they tried to do an interview with me when I was still active with the UFC, and, I was scared. I didn't want to speak up against the UFC. I didn't want to face a risk of possibly release, but lo and behold, I denied those guys. The UFC called me. They did an actual interview. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks after the interview, I was released from the UFC, so I should have just given the interview and told those guys what they needed to hear. But, even boxers have like a pension for every round that they fight, where they receive, something. And if they're at least a free enterprise type of thing, that they're able to, get money and compensation and everything else in their own little way. But the sad thing about it is that the UFC, they're basically trying to make the UFC almost like the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, but not have any unions. So everything works out in their favor, and nothing works out in the fighters' favor. And I'm not gonna lie, all these guys are scared of Dana. All these fighters, they're all scared of him, except a couple certain ones that are vocal. And the ones that are the main key players, like you got Ronda Rousey, you got McGregor, you got the Anderson Silvas, and the champions and stuff. They're the ones that they're the ones that are taken care of, to the utmost. And I mean, the UFC, they do, I'm not gonna lie, like they do take care of you in certain things. Like they do certain cool things where, like, on like Christmas you get like a present in the mail and stuff. Like I got an iPad from them for one Christmas. But at the same time, when you're raking in your net worth is $4 billion, it's like there's something wrong with that when guys are only getting paid 8 and then things are being taken away and not given to them.
That brings up, I guess you could say, the next portion is that you say that everybody's afraid of Dana White, or there's a selective few individuals that are not afraid of Dana White. What is it that Dana White presents that a lot of people fear?
Well, and I kind of feel bad for Dana too, because everyone thinks Dana is the shot caller of the UFC. Dana only owns 10% of the UFC. The Fertittas own the other 80%, and some random Saudi Arabia company owns the other 10%. So he's not the majority owner. So he's kind of like the puppet type of deal where, they tell him to do certain things and he does it, and then he gets all the credit or he gets all the backlash. I think the real shot caller, like, you never see, I mean, you got Lorenzo and you got Frank, but for some reason you never see Frank. You only see, I think, Lorenzo. So who knows which one of those brothers, is really the shot caller of the whole deal. But, I mean, I had, when the Ultimate Fighter show wrapped, we all went out to dinner with Dana, and it was cool, man. It was like a really crazy expensive dinner, and it was a good time. And I sat right next to the guy. The guy's super cool. He's one of those guys that you want to, like, crack a beer with and hang out with, and you're like, dude, this guy's really cool. But then I think there's another side of him too, where if you cross him, he'll bury you, type of deal. Where he seems like the type of individual that will, he'll really take you out, and he'll bury you, and he'll make it where you never have a chance to do anything else. And well, let's be honest here, it's called mixed martial arts. It's not UFC, but like they've somehow branded mixed martial arts. Like everyone I see now is like, I've got a gym out in Long Island, and it's like everyone's like, oh yeah, you train UFC? That's what they think it is. They think mixed martial arts is UFC now. So it's like, it's kind of a sad type of thing, but it's like all the gloves, man. You go to these big stores, it's all like, they say it's like UFC this, UFC that. And, I mean, it's a good thing, but at the same time, you have to remember that, like, when these guys grew and they had nothing, like, Tap Out was there with them, growing with them. Stitch was there. Burt Watson was there. Now, all of a sudden, all these people that grew with them, that helped create them to what they are, they're, like, non-existent. Like, look at Randy Couture. Randy Couture spoke up against him, and they never show anything about Randy Couture. They never mention one thing about him at all. And that guy freaking, if there's a Mount Rushmore of MMA, or the founders of MMA, Randy Couture would be on there. He was like a huge, huge thing. But since him and Dana butted heads, he's non-existent. And that's what I think. Go ahead.
The DuCross brothers here with Chris Cope. Chris Cope, I have so many questions for you right now, just based off of a couple things that you've said. One thing I want to say is that it's been brought up is Josh Koscheck called Dana White an errand boy. Kind of what you're hitting at is that he kind of seems like he's an errand boy, that he just kind of does and floats by and does whatever he does, and then he goes on a Twitter rant and attacks fans. So we're all trying to sit here and we're talking about Dana White and what his role actually is in the company. And then you mentioned the Fertittas, and I'm still trying to figure out why hasn't nobody came out and talked about Dana White about his Twitter rant that he went off when everybody was all up in arms about the Stitch situation.
Yeah, I mean, he's real big on Twitter, and he really uses the value of it, and he gets people like his, to follow him and do what he does, and it's. I mean, I think money changes people, and I don't know how Dana was 20 years ago, but evidently he was like a cardio boxing coach at some gym in Boston. I've heard all kinds of rumors why he left Boston and how he set up what he set up. But I think Dana went from nothing, literally, came across the UFC, was up for sale, somehow knew the Fertitta brothers. They decided to buy it. They built it from nothing. And look, I give the guy all the credit in the world. He took a sinking ship. And turned it into an empire. But he turned it into an empire off the backs of other individuals, because if it wasn't for that first season of The Ultimate Fighter, the UFC probably would have sank. That's why they'll always go down in history as the fight between Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin was the most important fight in mixed martial arts ever. Because if it wasn't for that fight, nobody would have tuned in, nobody would have checked it out, this and that. And, not a lot of people know this, but like Forrest Griffin, he's got a business, and Dana protects people that are close to him. Like Forrest Griffin's got he's got a business card that says Forrest Griffin, Vice President of the UFC. Nobody's ever asked who's the Vice President of the UFC, but evidently, according to this business card, it's Forrest Griffin. And I think that Dana and them really, they'll protect Forrest, they'll protect Chuck Liddell, because those are the real people that I think Dana is really close to. And those are really the people that really, helped build the UFC and MMA, where it is now. But these guys are doing what they're doing. They're putting their bodies through, and their brains through what they do. That they should be protected. They should be given something of some kind of conversation. I mean, look at Chris Liebman. I mean, that guy was on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, and that guy, I don't know how many fights that guy did in the UFC where you're just like, you couldn't believe it. Like the amount of grit that guy showed and the amount of determination he showed, was insane. And look at him now.
Yeah, Chris Lieben was one of the guys that when you saw a fight, literally turned into another individual. It seems like as soon as he saw blood, and he only knew how to come forward. And it was one of the things that I think everybody loved Chris Lieben for it. And yeah, I've seen Chris Lieben and how he is now, and then you see the latest report, and you just go, would this happen if fighters who are out of the UFC were compensated or taken care of correctly with the fighters union? You just wonder where everything would be at. Would you have certain things? I mean, you can even probably go back to the Evan Tanner situation. You can go all the way back to then and say, would Evan Tanner still be alive if there was fighters unions that were taking care of people mentally and physically?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the thing. That's the thing is that if you take the business model of UFC, you take the business model of the WWE, professional wrestling, it's the same business model. They travel around all over the world. It's an international market. It's not just domestic in the United States. It's international. It's in Europe. It's in Japan. It's everywhere. You got Vince McMahon. You got Dana White. And then you got all the wrestlers. You got their intro music. You got their theme. You got their gimmicks. They sell the toys. They sell the UFC action figures. They sell the professional wrestler action figures. But the problem now is like, where it's kind of going away from that whole business model is now this Reebok thing. Now you're taking this individuality away from, these fighters and what they want. I mean, next thing to go is probably their walkout music. UFC's going to control exactly what they walk out to. And then the next, they're going to control what they say. They already control really who they fight because they don't really have an option who they fight and who they don't fight because they don't fight the person they're gone. And, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where it is. I mean, it's got the momentum. It's got the capability to become the greatest sport in the world, in my opinion, because there's very few actual sports that are huge in America and that are huge in the world as well too. And the UFC is one of them. Like soccer is huge in Europe, but it's not big in the United States. football, it's huge in the United States. It's not big in Europe. But the UFC, I mean, shit. I mean, I fought in England. It's crazy. Those guys are like usually when you go to Vegas on an undercard, the place ain't filled up. You know, it's only like maybe a couple people. The whole O2 arena was packed out, starting with the first fight. They're fanatics over there. They're crazy about it. But it's like, you know, the UFC was built on the backs of fighters that put their livelihood, you know, on the line. And I mean, and here's the other reason, like, why I retired was because, you know, I started really seeing medical reports come out that, you know, mixed martial arts is more dangerous than boxing. It's more dangerous than football, you know, all sort of stuff. But for the longest time, everyone believed Dana. Dana said, no, UFC is the safest sport in the world. Why? Because boxers take more hits to the head and this and that. But, like, John Hopkins did a study, and it's like, dude, no. It's like, the problem is these guys get knocked out, and then all of a sudden you're on top of them, and they're TKO'd, and then all of a sudden they're taking more shots and creating more of a problem. I mean, and let's be honest, it's not healthy to take hits to the head. So I thought to myself, like, yeah, you can keep doing this, but then when you're like 35, 40, you got nothing left in the tank, what are you going to do then? You know what I mean? Who's going to be in your corner then? Because you literally sacrificed your whole life to one goal, and then all of a sudden when it's done, what next? So I thought to myself, all right, I'm going to use it for what it's worth, and, you know, I opened up a gym out here in Long Island, and I've kind of ran with the whole, you know, I was in the UFC Strike Force and the Ultimate Fighter, and, you know, the UFC used me, sure, but I use them too. I use them for the name, the credibility, and, you know, this and that, and I've kind of made a, you know, business out of it, but at the same time, it's like, you see guys that play professional football, baseball, they're paid to the day they die. They put their bodies on the line on the gridiron, and they're compensated well, even though they're like in their 60s or 70s and can't walk anymore, you know? They still get checked in the mail and are taken care of because they fought for that right to unionize. The problem with fighting is this, is that if you get rid of one fighter, there'll be some other kid out of nowhere that'll do the fight, and they'll build him up to make him look like he's the next great, you know, great champion. And they already do that all the time. They take kids from all over the world that nobody knows about, and they put them in a house where they all got to fight each other, and they build them up and they create them to be the next big thing. So they already know how to do it, and they'll keep doing it. I mean, if they lose all their champions, they lose all their fighters, they'll fight more, and they'll keep doing it. And this is unless they get checked, and they got to get checked by some serious people.
I mean, you just said a prime example of building up young upcoming fighters. I mean, prime example of that, even without the house, was Conor McGregor. Nobody really knew who Conor McGregor was until he started talking, and then he wins 2 fights in a row, and then the next thing you know, he's jumping over the cage and he's trying to get out Jose Aldo.
Yeah. You know, and that's the thing. I don't think Conor is like a real big talker. I think he's probably a pretty quiet guy. I think he's probably a pretty cool guy, but, you know, they all get it from, you know, Chael Sonnen. And Chael Sonnen, like, I've talked to Chael Sonnen on the phone. Like, he's nothing like how he is, you know, when you see him on the camera. But the thing is, they all got that from Muhammad Ali, and Muhammad Ali got that from professional wrestlers. So it's like, you know, it works. Because here's the thing. People want to see the grudge match. They want to see guys talking trash. And it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Because it's a good thing because it grows the UFC, but it's a bad thing because it goes away from that whole Bushido martial arts, you know, conduct of, you know, respect. Respect your opponent and everything else. Like Pride, yeah, so what if it was owned by the Japanese mob? Those guys paid in cash, and on top of it, as long as you fought your butt off, they kept bringing you back. They had guys on that roster that lost 10 in a row. But they always gave it everything they had, and they kept bringing them back. And granted, the UFC is like, you know, it's an impacted type of deal, and they've only have a certain number for, they'll have a certain room for a certain amount of fighters. You know, but at the same time, it's like, the way I look at it is you can have different leagues. You can have the big show, which is basically the main UFC, and then you have like baseball where it's AAA, AA, you know, single A type of deal. And, you know, I think fighters, I think honestly too, fighters are just afraid to go to the other organization. I think Bellator could be gaining momentum to go head to head with the UFC, but they first have to stop these little circus acts of like things like Kimbo Slice versus versus Ken Shamrock and stuff like that. They have to actually have pretty good shows. But you watch, enough of these guys in UFC they're going to get so fed up and pissed off, they're going to go to Bellator. And Scott Coker, putting him in as the head guy, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's been in the fight game for a long time. He realizes that you can't go head-to-head with the UFC. You're going to have to build it, and throughout years, you gain momentum and you go from there. But, Rome was an amazing civilization, but it fell because they just conquered too much territory and they got greedy, and, they fell internally. And if you see right now with Dana, it's kind of like what happened with Caesar,
Chris Cope here with the DuCross brothers. I mean, laying it out on all out there for everybody. I mean, the references I didn't even know anything about. I mean, the Rome one, that was really good.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, my question to you, and we've kind of gone around this a little bit, is that you compared it to wrestling. I can't help but think about here and kind of be saddened by some of the topics we've touched on. The most notable one that kind of irked me a little bit was comparing it to WWE and Vince McMahon and stuff like that. How many fighters, and it compares to WWE because of everything they've gone through with the deaths of fighters, how many more fighters are we going to see either die that has fought in the UFC, or break down mentally and physically like Chris Lieben, or do something to themselves like Tanner, or the situation that you have with Bones Jones? When is somebody going to seriously take accountability and help out the fighters? Is that something somebody's going to see in the near future, or is it just going to be smoke and mirrors and trying to pull a wool over everybody's eyes before something's done to help you guys out?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the type of thing where, all these guys, they're living in fear. First off, they have to stop living in fear, and they have to realize that Dana, when push comes to shove, what was he? He was an amateur boxer. That was the cardio boxing guy out of Boston, all right? The Vatitas are big money guys and everything else. They don't run the world. They're not God. And it's all said and done, it's a freaking fight. That's what it is. Whether you fight for the UFC once or you fight for the UFC 200 times, you're a UFC veteran. Nobody can ever take that away from me. It can never take away that I'm a Strikeforce veteran, that I'm a UFC veteran, and I'm a semi-finalist of the Ultimate Fighter Season 13. Can't take that away. You can't wipe it clean. You can't erase it because it is what it is. But they own all the rights to the fighters. Like, none of these guys get paid for the video game. I tried to buy a picture for my gym to put up. I think I had to pay the UFC like $10,000 or something like that. It's been crazy. It's my own image, but you sign all those rights away. Now that would never go in the NFL. That would never go in the NBA. Now here's the deal: you don't want to unionize. Like, if the UFC doesn't want to, they don't want the union and everything else. Then stop trying to run the program like a professional team. Stop trying to take all these fighters and run it like the NBA or the Major League Baseball, this and that. Stop putting caps on sponsorships and everything else. You want it to be free enterprise for you? Let it be free enterprise for the fighters. Let them grab whatever sponsors they want. Let them pick and choose whatever fights they want. Let it be more of a partnership than an employer and employee. Because if you want to have those gimmicks and you want to have those little rules, you're going to have to unionize. Because if the places that have rules like that, you got the NBA, you got the NFL, Major League Baseball, and everything else. You know what? Hey, newsflash, just unionize. And they got back and everything else. And that's the biggest thing. The biggest fear I ever had with fighting was I kept thinking about that movie, The Wrestler, and Mickey Rourke's character, and how he's this old, decrepit guy still doing the wrestling deal. He was once the big show, and now he's in the small shows, this and that. Shows people how he was in a video game, and I'm like, you know what? That ain't gonna be me. So I knew that when it was time to go, I'd left it, and I had some goals when I went into fighting, and in a way, I feel like I've kind of accomplished those goals. UFC being one of them. But like when I left, I got a small title in some small little organization, and I tried to get in a bigger organization. I didn't win the fight, but then I thought to myself, it's time to kind of walk away because A, I don't have the training I once had, you know, in San Diego, and B, what else am I gonna really do? Like, am I gonna keep trying to go back to UFC, and then you go back, and then you're fighting for your employer and this and that, and it's like, I'm not hanging from anyone's nuts anymore. And I never had a run with Dana. I never saw the guy even be mean to anybody, and that guy was super cool when I went to, you know, dinner with him after that show wrapped. But the way I look at it is, stop trying to live in the past and all. This is the biggest problem with fighting. You're in the entertainment business. You got professional musicians, you got professional actors, and you got professional fighters that, you know, do the entertainment thing or athletes. Problem is this: you can only do the sport for so long. Then when it comes time to hang it up, you got to walk away. Well, with singers and actors, they can do that stuff till the day they die. A lot of these guys get so entrenched in this identity. You know, I used to, like John Copenhaver, or, you know, War Machine, that's my old coach from San Diego. And I always knew him as John, and I always thought he was a cool guy. But somewhere along the way, and I saw the transition when he first got him the Ultimate Fighter, when he came back, and the guy started changing a little bit. You know, John Copenhaver died, and War Machine was, you know, took over. That was his image. That was his brand. You know, he did this, he did that. You know, everything they talked about, everything he tweeted and yada, yada, yada. It was like a character. Like, it was like Batman takes over Bruce Wayne.
Kind of like Mayhem Miller.
Yeah, exactly. Mayhem Miller to the T. And there's a lot of studies where a lot of football players, a lot of boxers, professional wrestlers, they suffer from high levels of depression because of all the head trauma. You take all that trauma, you take all those shots, and all of a sudden depression kicks in. I think more than anything what these guys are is more and more depressed. And you mix that with drugs. A lot of these guys, what they do is they fight, and they go through the training camp, and they live a very clean life. But once that fight's done, they're doing every drug on the table. They're drinking and partying their butts off. I mean, I've seen it, flat out. You're around a whole bunch of girls, you're around a whole bunch of drugs, you're around a whole bunch of booze, and then all of a sudden you get that call to do another fight, and you go right back in the camp. But then it's like, okay, all that bad stuff you're doing, you can't touch anymore. You got to be good. But of course, you know, like with John Jones, what's going to happen? John Jones probably thought that he was untouchable. Nobody could screw with him. You know, he had the Reebok deal, and then he had the Nike deal, and he had this, and he had that. He's, you know, look, they all do it. He just got caught. And it's a fight game. It's a dirty, dirty, dirty business. And the worst part about it is, when you're like the bright and shining star, you get all the attention. Lose a couple fights, you're faded memory. Nobody wants you anymore. It's almost like the porn business in a sick, demented way. You know what I mean?
That is so true. Chris Cope here with the DuCross brothers. I'm trying to figure out, when you discuss everything and you figure out at the end of the day, I guess my last question to you is going to be, will we ever see a fighters union? And how thankful are you for being out of the game now and just doing you?
I mean, I'm thankful because I did what I needed to do, and I got what I needed to get out of it. And, you know, the fighters that I'm bringing up now, the fighters that I'm coaching, my whole thing with them is to create them and make them better people. You know, it's not to get them in the cage and make sure that they get the UFC and this and that. It's like, hey, let's push you through some certain stuff. Let's push you through sparring sessions. And let's show you that you're actually capable of a lot more than what you think you are. And I think with the union, as long as it's individuals in the UFC, I don't think, I mean, unions would be hard to do. I think that they're going to get chipped away at. That they're going to have to give the guys certain little things like, you know, they got basically, they give them little things like health insurance. And they might start giving them like a type of deal where they give them like a certain base salary if they don't have a fight coming up, and they're getting compensated somehow, some way. But I think that the organization that had the best chance for the union was the IFL, because those were teams going against each other. But that's a dirty thing about, just like the porn business. Somebody could be on top, and then all of a sudden what happens? They drop out. They'll rise somebody back up to be the next star. You know what I mean? It's like you said with Boogie Nights. You know, that whole scene, Mark Wahlberg and that new guy. It's like, I mean, that's how fighting is. You can take anybody like a Conor McGregor that's in the middle of Ireland, no one knows who the hell he is, and you can build him up to be the next star. As long as they've got that it factor. That it factor is something that you want to pay attention to. You want to see what they say. Like Brock Lesnar had it. Okay, no matter what happened, you wanted to see Brock Lesnar fight because you just never knew what he was going to do. Conor McGregor's got it. Ronda Rousey's got it. You know, you take certain champions that are extremely good, but they don't have that it factor. Then it's a different deal. No one really stays tuned. But like even Anderson Silva, you couldn't understand half the time what he was saying, but he had that it factor because you never knew what he was going to do. You never knew what kind of crazy knockout he was going to do next. You know, it's like Mike Tyson. You always want to see him fight. You always want to see him do whatever he's going to do. But there has to be, like right now, the UFC is a dictatorship between basically, you know, and mixed martial arts. There's got to be some kind of governing force. You know, you got the government. You know, you have the executive, judicial, and the legislation. So they basically outrule one another and control where one of them doesn't get super mega powerful. There's got to be something in play that does the same thing with, you know, the UFC. And that's only going to happen if certain people walk up and certain people get vocal. And really what's going to happen is just the media. That's why when I post this stuff on Facebook, we're like, hey, you got a news station, you got whatever you want me to talk about, let's do it, because then momentum happens. Then eventually, you know what happens? 60 Minutes gets a hold of it. 60 Minutes does an interview, Dateline. Some of these big news organizations, and then all of a sudden, hey, the UFC, we got to change things. You know why? Because all of a sudden the news takes hold of it. But the problem is, in order for that to happen, people got to stop living in fear. They've got to realize that the UFC is eventually going to get checked, and that they never will get checked unless they take a stand.
See, Chris Cope,
unless they stand up for their rights, you know.
See, that's something that's why when I saw your post, my brother and I were like, dude, we got to get this guy, because I think we are like one of the only two guys that in the combat sports talk world, we are the only ones that dare to cross that line, because we believe that you can't live in fear. There's always going to be topics that you have to talk about and stuff like that. And it seems like there's so many people that have a stranglehold on the combat sports talk world that, oh, well, you can't talk out about UFC. You can't talk about this. But it's like, dang it, every single person that's out there, like you, like the fighters, like the fans, people that are right out on the street, that are starting up in the grassroots, in the amateur ranks, the grassroots. This is why we do what we do, is for guys like you, to give you guys a platform to talk open, talk freely, speak your mind, understand it. But something that irks me is that you said it, that UFC is like the dictatorship. I've only been saying it that they're like the government. They have three branches. You have your rich, your poor, you have your rich, your middle class, and your poor people. That's how I see it's ran.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, and that it's the type of deal where it's like, look, you can try to go, all right, well, I'm in the UFC now. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm a low tier fighter. I'm just gonna play it safe, and I'm gonna try to kiss Joe Silva's ass, kiss Dana White's ass, and you know what? I lose a couple, they're gonna keep me because they like me. No, they're not gonna keep you. They're gonna cut you like they cut everybody else. Doesn't matter if you fight your ass off. Doesn't matter if you know, you do the best performance ever. They're still gonna get rid of you. Because here's the thing: you got a losing record. They can't market you. They can't build you. They can't do anything with you.
That's why they have the 3-strike rule.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it's a type of deal like, you know, it's now it's 1-2. It used to be 1-2, but then there's certain guys that don't like Antonio McKee. I think that guy went 1-0 in the UFC, and they cut him. So, you know, there's no security whatsoever, and the reason that it doesn't happen, there is no security. So nobody stands up. You know, if you stand up and you stand for something, then change happens. But if you live in fear and you let these guys own you and you let them run your life, what's it going to do?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to give them more and more power. But the moment you take a stand, and you don't need to have a whole bunch of money, and you don't need to be like a high-level fighter, you don't even really need to be a fighter. All you need is just express your opinion and voice your opinion and check these guys. Because if you don't, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger they get, the more, it's like you take a look at Gandhi. Gandhi took down British rule in India. The guy didn't have any weapons. He didn't have any guns. He had his opinion. And he had a passive way of doing it, and somehow he convinced the whole country to beat the British without a gun, without a weapon, without raising their fist or anything else.
Chris Cope here with
words are powerful.
Right. Chris Cope here with the DuCross Brothers Sports Words, embracing change. Chris Cope, we just want to say thank you for taking the time, for being real and open and honest with us, and ripping the Band-Aid off, saying that it's okay to be you.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. And, like I said, blast this thing out as much as possible. If anyone else wants to do interviews, if anyone else wants to get more vocal about it, do it. And for any fighters out there, for anybody that's a fan of the UFC, I'm not telling you to boycott the UFC. I'm not telling you to stop watching it, stop buying it, or anything else. What I'm telling you is voice your opinion, voice your concern. Because as individuals, we're not that strong. But the moment that we all group together and we all form one unit, there's strength in that. Take it to Twitter, take it to Facebook, take it to freaking whatever. But then all of a sudden it'll be a chain effect, and we're fighting for people's rights here. People that go into that cage, they put their livelihood on the line, and they do it for you, the fans. And as a fighter, you've lived this dream. Eventually, you want to make it this big show, but how do you want to make it? Do you want to make it in fear, and do you want to stay there in fear, or do you actually want to be who you are? Face that fear, because you facing that fear, that's what got you in that cage. If you can face that fear of doing that first fight in that cage, you can face the fear of going head to head with the UFC. So don't be scared. Step up to the plate and be who you are. Be a man and be a woman and embrace change and fight for your rights, because you deserve them. If you're putting your livelihood and you're putting your health on the line like you do, you deserve rights and you deserve protection. You deserve to basically be in a unionized organization that takes care of you.
Chris Cope, how can people reach out to you?
Facebook. I don't know if you guys want to call my cell. My cell number is 619-961-7506. Give me a call, shoot me a text, hit me up on Facebook. If you want to email me, it's chriscope55@gmail.com. I'll do any interviews you want. I'll talk to you. I mean, whatever it is, just let's get something going, man.
Chris Cope, are you sure you want to put your phone number out there on blast?
Yeah, I don't care. It's fine.
Fair enough. All right, Chris Cope, thank you for joining us today, and looking forward to further discussions with you in the future.
All right, sounds good. Let's do it. Thanks, guys.
No problem.